Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and online role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where I take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, we'll be looking at the DM's Guild adventure, The Theocracy, designed by Parry for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. So we switch over and take a look. Hello! At the Theocracy. So, just as a starter, JVC Parry, Joshua, is one of my favorite creators on the DM's Guild. I've been enjoying his work for some time, just reading through it. I don't know if I've actually ran any of it, but I do plan on officially adapting one of his earlier adventures into whenever I run Tomb of Annihilation, which will be our next campaign after Storm King's Thunder. So I'm excited about that. I'm a fan. The Theocracy is his latest adventure, and while I'm not a big fan of the actual title of the adventure, and that is also the title of the group that you're dealing with, the Theocracy is just so hopelessly generic. I really like this adventure. It offers a really complex, densely packed dungeon crawl with a really nice, rich theme that I don't think is used a whole lot in D&D, which is like angels and paladins and priests aren't usually used as the antagonists of the adventure. You know, usually your characters are playing like the holy characters, your clerics and your paladins. You might be dealing with some, but usually they're evil in some way, or there's demons involved. This one, no, there's straight up like they have an angel in their temple. But the twist is that this is a heist mission, and your party is tasked with stealing basically just a MacGuffin item from this very, very large temple, which is, I think, a neat twist and makes it stand out quite well. So, the Theocracy is designed as a one-shot adventure, and we say one-shot not in terms of you can do this in a single session, but just that it's kind of a self-contained, usually in just like one area kind of a thing, which is a lot of these DM's Guild creators. And that's kind of why you go to the DM's Guild anyway, is to get these little drop-in areas, dungeons, adventures into an existing campaign. These aren't meant to be full-blown campaigns. This one is essentially just the dungeon, but it is a massive dungeon. And it's also for higher level. This is Tier 3, which is designed for party between 11th and 16th level, which is quite a bit higher than I've seen on the DM's Guild. Usually it's lower level stuff, because that's where a lot of your players and a lot of where D&D takes place is, and I'm sure a lot of people have stories about how you start a campaign and it ends up just floundering, or you can't get together anymore and it dies on the vine at, usually around Tier 2 or something. And so you don't see a lot of these higher level content, and my personal experience with high level D&D is very, very limited. We ran our campaign from Last Mine of Phandelver into Princes of the Apocalypse, and we ended Princes before they even reached 12th level. And now we're playing Storm King's Thunder, and we just reached 10th level, but I think we're nearing the end of that one. So even a lot of the published 5th edition campaigns they tend to end around the Tier 3. So it's nice to be able to get something like this. And it's useful because it's pretty easy to drop it in to an existing campaign, in that it takes place in a temple within a city, and you can literally put that in any city that you want. In this case, Parry uses the example of Baldur's Gate in the Forgotten Realms, but literally, and again, like any good one-shot, it's designed to be dropped into whatever your existing campaign may be. Oops, there we go. So yeah, let's go ahead and look at the adventure we've got here. You can see the artwork is very good. In fact, I'm going to scroll through it real quick just so you can see how well done this adventure. It's incredibly well organized. It's detailed. I love the artwork, the formatting, the font. Like, this looks, just scrolling through it, this looks like a professionally published D&D 5th edition adventure. Like the way, the descriptive text is in the little white boxes at the front. Every single room is broken down and annotated. And the artwork is fantastic. You can see the grid map looks really, really nice. They have that nice little background. It's like that sepia tone. This looks amazing, and I really like those DM's Guild adventures that go above and beyond when it comes to just the visualization, the aesthetic appeal of the actual PDF document. And a lot of my favorite adventures, like I said, of his work, they're just white paper with just very much basic grid, hand drawn maps, and it's the content that I like. It's not the visualization. But man, it really helps to have really, really nice, well-produced looking format and organization in here. This really sells it quite well. I was blown away just looking through and reading it. It's very easy to find what you need, and you can get that nice, as a DM, you want to be able to put that stuff, you have to be able to visualize it so that you can then allow your players to visualize it based on your own descriptions, and having actual artwork for you to look at and be like, okay, yeah, this is a really like fancy, like old medieval style, just really, really nice, ornate, holy, like cathedral with all these various rooms and balconies and courtyard and even an underground prison, and it's absolutely fantastic, and it's nice to be able to get all this really, really high quality artwork. So that's a big plus. All right, let's go through and look at what we've got. So the whole thing is about 20 pages, and most of it is just a single dungeon crawl. So it is just a gigantic dungeon crawl, which I like dungeon crawls, so that's great. And as I mentioned, it's designed for 11th to 16th level, which is firmly tier 3, 5 to 10 hour. I don't know how anybody can come up with those kind of hour stats. Obviously, you can run through it like once or twice and be like, okay, it took us this long. But it really depends, because this one is especially designed as a heist mission, so depending on how much combat there is, and combat is a big factor with how long it takes. If your characters get into a lot of fights, it could be a lot longer, whereas if your characters are very, very stealthy, they could kind of run through it a lot easier. But and like I said, I'm limited when it comes to that high-level D&D play, but I know that starting at that tier 3 level, like, turns and things take a lot longer because players have a lot more resources and abilities available to them, so that can also be tricky. But it is designed as a one-shot. So your introduction just kind of affords you, it gives you notes about how best to run the adventure. This one says you're probably not going to need to level anybody up at all, which is fine. And I like that it's balanced that way, although it's a tricky thing to balance. I mean, 11 to 16 is a big balance, and unfortunately there are no notes about scaling the difficulty for lower level to... I mean, it seems like a big difference between an 11th level party and a 16th level party, but there's no notes on if your party is towards the lower end or the higher end. It's just this is what it is, and you kind of have to roll with it. Again, my own experience with that high level play is limited, so I'm not sure how much of the balance is going to be swingy like that. But your mileage may vary, and unfortunately there's also no way, if you want to come in at like a 6th level party, if you want to start slashing in stats and whatever, there's no notes on that. But you could, I think, easily at least start off with taking out a lot of the custom built NPCs, of which there are quite a few, which is awesome. But they're like the average NPC here is like a CR7 paladin with like a 9th level spellcaster, which is insanity. So you could probably easily start with just literally use the same dungeon design, but just downscale all those to like CR3 knights or something, and it'd be a little less thematic, but it'd be more doable. But yeah, and then Parry mentions the background was written for his own home group with his own city, and obviously Forgotten Realms is the more standard one that a lot of D&D adventure is run in, so he's the example of Baldur's Gate here. The hooks, there's a neat history that is written that especially would fit in well with a like Rise of Tiamat storyline, in that this war of dragons, and then this one dragon was killed, and its body, I guess, was harvested to make all these really cool legendary artifacts, one of which is the Dragonfall Horn, which ends up getting basically under lock and key by this new militant sect of Tyr called the Theocracy, which is set up shop in Baldur's Gate. That's cool, but it's really a MacGuffin. Like there's no real reason you need this horn other than they tell you need this horn, and the horn itself isn't actually given any stats. There's no stat block or notes about what this is. And usually when you have that kind of item, like usually at least, there might not be any role-playing notes about it, in terms of what happens afterwards, but there'll at least be like, okay, here's what the actual item does for you. And that's not here, which I thought was really missing, because this is literally the thing that they're going after. And I mean, yeah, they're probably going to turn it into the Harpers, but at least, it'd be fun to detail, like, okay, what does this legendary artifact do that the players go through all this work to actually get? And there's not that. And most of the hooks are just like, they need this artifact, you better go get it. So it's not the best motivation, but a good DM will come up with a way of doing that. And I think it'd be really nice if you had a PC that was a follower of Tyr, or a PC that happened to be had ties to this city, and maybe like or to other religions, because it turns out the Theocracy has been banning basically anybody who's not part of the whatever they call the triumvirate of gods with Tyr, which I think are Helm and Ilmatar. My Forgotten Realms lore is also limited when it comes to the deities, but so the Theocracy is not actually totally good, aligned, and altruistic, as you'll find out. All right, so part 1, gathering information. Again, it's a heist mission, so your players should be basically like canvassing the joint, and they'll learn and I like that it's organized literally like who, what, where, and when, and why for the Theocracy and for this group of Harpers called the Sound of Silence. As I mentioned, I don't like the name of the Theocracy. I think it's like calling a city the city, or the dungeon the dungeon. I don't like it. It's really generic. I don't like it as the name of the title. I don't like it as the name of this group. I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. Like, you could use all kinds of cool words and names for this group of militant Tyr followers. Tyr's Justice, or the Right Hands of Tyr, or something to do with angels or warhammers or wings. Like, there's a lot of cool thematic stuff, and it's used in this dungeon. I think that the title should reflect that. The actual name of the group should reflect that. I hate the Theocracy actual name. And the Sound of Silence, like, that's a cool name for a Harper group. The Sound of Silence. That's awesome. Like, that's a good one. That's basically the group the PCs probably end up working for, the Harper, and that fits really well. My knowledge is limited, but I do know about the Harpers, and they kind of the not anarchists, but they want to not let anybody get too powerful, and especially want to consolidate like magical items and keep those out of the hands of bad people. The Theocracy isn't necessarily bad. They're kind of bad. That's kind of cool. Like, there's a gray area there. Like, yeah, Tyr isn't a bad god. He's very lawful, interested in justice, righteousness, the backbone of every action movie, basically. But the problem is the High Theocrat has basically banned arcane magic. She's got a cool backstory about how she was disfigured and wounded by a mage, and she outlaws all arcane magic. And as I mentioned, they outlaw like worship to other gods, and that's pretty shitty, especially with a world that has many, many colorful, interesting gods to worship. So the Theocracy isn't great, but they're not like an evil temple performing like horrible rituals and things like that. So they do imprison people, but that's an interesting gray area. You're not going after like an orc stronghold, or an undead filled dungeon or demons or anything like that. This is a holy temple that serves people and heals them. They even have an angel, which is cool. But they're not. They're also a little tyrannical, and I like that angle a lot. That's a cool angle. So, the Sound of Silence, they work for these guys. I think the leader is literally called Simon, which I assume is a Simon and Garfunkel joke. If it's not, it damn well should be. But they learn about this artifact that's been locked away by this group, and they basically get the information that this is in the temple. I believe the Theocracy is technically this like walled off portion of Baldur's Gate. Like, literally, they've eked out an entire area of the city. But they tell you that it's in the temple. You need to get in the temple. And you can find out different options. You can, and there's a cool note about the worshippers of Tyr. If you've got a party member, I think my camera's blocking it right now, right here, where they'll be permitted access. And there are certain areas that are open to the public, which is nice, so they can go in and check out, some of the. And that's a cool thing. I also really like, I used to run Shadowrun, and that was a big thing about Shadowrun, was all about heist missions. And it's cool when you can let your players like go to that area and like formulate strategies on their own, and you as a DM could just sit back and kind of listen to what they plan, which is always a really fun thing for a DM to do. The more your players can just talk amongst each other, that you've set things up really well. So I really like that they can go in and see areas that are just open to the public, and check it out and kind of canvas different sections and see what all they can get into without actually like going into, it's kind of like a video game where you have like areas that are specifically open, and then you'll see like the red, door or something, like, oh, if you go beyond this point, then people are going to start turning hostile on you. But they'll figure out different areas and avenues they can get in. They could either just walk themselves in, or there's places you can sneak into. There's enough here. It's not a very big section, but I think there's enough information here to get across what you need them to do. In any case, part 2 is the actual, and it's literally just called the heist. Your characters should be infiltrating this temple, and here you've got what's really fun is suggestions about how they can get in. So it says like you could hide in an empty dormitory from patrols. You could force some stolen horses into a gallop to escape. Force some stolen horses into a gallop to escape could require a successful DC 10 animal handling check, kind of as a distraction. You could force a cornered librarian to spill some information about the layout of the central temple. Those are really cool things. I like that those are specific examples given. Obviously, it's very difficult to plan for all the crazy things your players will come up with, but having some examples lets you as the DM kind of work, okay, I can think about these are cool things that I could even hint to the players because I particularly like these avenues. And then we get to the actual dungeon, and this is very familiar to pretty much how every dungeon is organized in D&D, which is annotated room by room with numbers. The Temple of Tyr is 3 levels and 29 rooms. It is one of the biggest dungeons I have ever seen, period. I guess I haven't seen that many dungeons, but still, that is extremely large. Usually you've got dungeons that are broken off like Prince of the Apocalypse, where it's multiple dungeons. Obviously, you'd have to go to something like the Tomb of Annihilation to get bigger than that, which that one is substantially bigger. But this is a huge, huge dungeon. And we're talking Tier 3 PCs, so I'm happy that it's huge. That's awesome. Because those guys are powerful. And I like the map here. It does say 1 square equals 5 feet. You have to zoom in quite a bit to actually see the grid. It's very much like gray lines. But it's 1 square equals 5 is perfect. That's how all maps should be forever and ever and ever. And you can see there's some open areas here at the beginning. These little entryways, public access. And then you've got like some storage rooms. There's some holy hounds up here that are literally like wing it. In fact, I think there's a picture. If I scroll down, let the PDF load. There we go. And there's some nice custom creatures, which I'll get into, but literally like holy winged hounds that have like a radiant breath attack, which is really nice and flavorful. The courtyard here in Area 10 literally has a, what do they call that kind of? There's a couple different angels. A planetar. Planetar or planetar? I don't know. It's the mid-level. It's a CR. God, what is it? I just had the monster manual. It's like a CR 16 fucking angel. Like, holy crap. That can be nasty. What I love about this, obviously, I've mentioned the formatting before. It does the descriptive text for every single room, which is fantastic. It has the breakdown of treasure, the breakdown of creatures, but more importantly, daytime, nighttime activity. And that is excellent for a heist mission because your players are going to want to know, like playing any stealth video game, you're going to hang back and you're going to see how the NPCs operate day to day. And that can be really rewarding for players to reward that kind of patience and foresight, is to be able to see, okay, how does this area operate during the day? How does it operate during the night? How does it operate during this time? Depending on how complex you want to get. And there are some really nice notes about, okay, what happens when the alarms go off, what happens during the day. Like, for example, in the, what do they call that? The chapel, which is that big 10 area. During the day, half a dozen priests conduct services and rituals in the chapel, inviting members of the public to join them in their worship. And then there's 6 priests and the planetar, which is just that giant angel thing right in the middle that they summoned. And then at night, it is devoid of devoid of mortals. That's a fucking great line. The planetar rests here, slowly rotating in the air. That's amazing. I love that. That's good visualization. That's a fun image. But more importantly, tactically, it lets players plan out and the fact that the place is different from day to night, which is really fun. And that's true of almost every room in here. It has day-night notes like that, which is absolutely fantastic. I love that. But yeah, you can see there's a ton. I mean, there's a latrine in here. How many dungeons account for having a goddamn bathroom? This is a really, really awesome dungeon. It's very thematic because, like I said, you've got your winged holy hounds, the kind of the opposite of the hellhounds that breathe the radiant fire. You've got rooms, and the whole thing is like got a protection from undead on it. There's an audience chamber that has a zone of truth perpetually put on it. Like it's, you know, all the ornamentation, all the treasures, all the creatures. These theocratic paladins, these giant, I think I mentioned there's CR7 paladins patrol around. There's priests. It's very, very thematic. Everything fits together. This is not a dungeon with just random creatures inside. This is very much like you are going after this temple, and it has all the things that you would expect a temple of Tyr to have. The boss is that high theocrat Euphemia Golden Gauge, who's a halfling, which I love that because you don't usually see halflings in this, like, I don't know, paladin place of authority. And she was, like I mentioned, she's got a nice little backstory with well, let's go ahead and jump back to that. Where are you, Euphemia? Hi, Theocrat Euphemia Golden Gauge. So I like that she's got a little backstory here. You know, it's not crazy detailed, but it's enough to where you get a feeling of who this character is and where they come from. And this one is just she's terrified of arcane magic. She was disfigured by a battle, and so she's outlawed it as part of her kind of rise to power within this militant sect of Tyr. Which probably all of Tyr followers are pretty militant, come to think of it. They're all justice. But she wields this cool magical hammer of Tyr. She's got legendary actions, a CR11 paladin boss, which is really nice if you want to go up to the top floor. And I believe she has a stone, like, statue angel is the other, let's see if I can, yeah, stone angel. Which is badass. That's very cool, as like a guardian in that room, which is neat. That's the top floor, which isn't much. There's just a couple rooms that go up to the top, and it's mostly that's where the High Theocrat is. I don't think you need any reason to go there. So the interesting thing is, you don't know exactly where the item is, so you're going to have to explore a little bit. And the Theocracy isn't necessarily evil. They are tyrannical and militant, and you probably do need to stop them. What I would do if I were running this adventure is I would paint it as, okay, you need this item, but you don't want to go in here and kill everybody. Like, that would be really bad. Even though people are uncomfortable with this group, nobody is saying we need to go to war with this temple in the middle of the city. Like, that's not something you want to do. But what I would do is layer in information as the players go down into this place and find out that this place is a bit extreme. There is a torture chamber below. There are prisoners. None of it is actually written as extreme as I was kind of hoping for. I'm glad the adventure didn't go that direction, but I would want to force my players to make kind of an interesting choice of like, well, wait, do we actually need to confront the High Theocrats? And maybe you could paint it as maybe the group isn't that bad, but this High Theocrat particularly has passed down these edicts of anti-arcane magic, anti-other worship of gods, and she is the problem. In which case, that would be an interesting twist to the adventures. Halfway through, the players suddenly get the motivation that, oh, we need to actually go confront the boss of this dungeon and take care of her. Somehow, without going to war with the whole temple, or maybe they can find like evidence in her room of a journal or a diary or something about how she's gone too far with things, and then you can take her down politically. Like, that would add to the heist element and add to the danger level, and you probably have to end up fighting her anyway. That kind of stuff could be cool, and that's just me spitballing. So I like that the pieces are in place. The adventure doesn't necessarily suggest any of that. It just gives you all the pieces and players on the board that you need and could use to then develop those kind of stories while they're in the dungeon. Because again, this is a very lengthy dungeon, so I think it's cool to be able to develop those. What the adventure does do is give you some really fun prisoners. So you've got this dungeon level, which is pretty substantial. There's a neat trap here called Cleansing Glory. It's a dangerous threat, and it's a custom-built trap that like fires this beam of light that can blind anybody that's not, let's see, that doesn't wear a holy symbol of Tyr. So if your players are not disguising themselves properly, they will take some serious damage there. The prisoners in area 25, which puts them over here. It's guarded by a invisible imp who who is basically an unwilling servant of the Theocracy, because they are in possession of his true name, which is a big thing in demons in the Forgotten Realms. Is you can possess their true name, and you basically control that demon. Which that's a neat hook as the like warden of the prison, and can be a little annoying character. In fact, I kind of wish there was more role-playing notes on this imp, because he does have a name, Pescus, something like that. The other prisoners are a member of the Harpers, which so it kind of turns into a rescue mission there. Simon Fiddleworth. Okay, so he wasn't the leader of the SOS, he was the prisoner. He's been badly tortured, has 4 levels of exhaustion, so you could save him and make him kind of a temporary party member, although he's really beaten up. The other one's just a Rakshasa who was captured after masquerading as a member of their order and attempted to open a gate to the abyss. So it's called Father Odo. And Rakshasas are those tiger demon characters, which could be a really fun character. Again, I wish there's almost more role-playing notes in that. I really like when adventurers do this. They give you, and a lot of D&D adventures do this, they give you these NPCs that are not hostile to you within a dungeon to give you those kind of fun role-playing opportunities. Anywhere from just providing like information to literally joining the party or having other motives, which the cool motive here is that that true name of the imp is in a like, you know, human flesh skin book in an area. So the players can acquire that, which means they could acquire the imp, but also the Rakshasa wants that book, and obviously that's a very dangerous, evil thing to have. So that's a really cool twist and an item that they can find, which I'm digging that a lot. They find that, I believe, in the final area, which is this, you can see all the notes here for one area, the storeroom, which is a really fun puzzle that reminded me of a point-and-click adventure game, where you have to solve this little statue puzzle, place on the shrine that which is mine. You have to know to get one of the paladin's warhammers, either through theft or defeating one, and then solve a kind of a series of puzzles in order to essentially open the final passageway to the Holy Vault, which contains the Dragonfall Horn, as well as just a shit ton of treasure. There's a lot of treasure in this adventure, and it's actually itemized. As I skip ahead a little bit, at the very end here, is a reference page. This is awesome, by the way. All adventurers need this very much. This is great. But it references any time a stat block would be needed, which is magic items and creatures. It gives you what book it's from and the page it's from, which is fantastic. So things from the player's handbook, the monster manual, Volo's Guide to Monsters, or if it's in this adventure itself, so it just says like Appendix B right there. There's even some from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which is pretty cool. Dungeon Master's Guide, obviously, so that's really nice and helpful that it includes that. And you can see there's a lot of information here. So any traps, magic items, and creatures are noted at this reference page, which +1. I'm a little disappointed in the custom magic items. There's not a whole lot, and like I said, the actual Dragonfall Horn pictured here, the whole reason for this adventure is not spelled out at all. The only ones here are the Hammer of Tyr, which is a neat magic item. Unfortunately only usable by followers of Tyr, which makes sense. It's like a throwing hammer, wielded by the boss, and then this Blessed Urn, which you can literally carry around. You can put 50 gold pieces in, and it casts the Bless spell, which is kind of a funny commentary on religious tithes. Several creatures, I guess mentioned before, the Holy Hound, a CR4, a Celestial, actually, the Stone Angel, which is a neat kind of just cross between a stone construct and an angel, and the Theocratic Paladins, which you are fighting a lot of, CR7 friggin' Paladins, 9th level spellcasters that can heal, which is, man, that would be really annoying to fight. Like, AC 21 creature that can heal with 45 hit points all around them. That is some long, protracted battles right there. I don't think your party is meant to go, this is not a room-to-room fighting, though. So if any fighting at all, they want to be able to keep it contained, which adds to the fun twist of the adventure is you're not just going through this dungeon fighting everything in your path. You are trying to go through with the least amount of bloodshed and the least amount of alarms being triggered, because this is a very dangerous place, and more importantly, they're not really evil. They're just a little, tyrannical and extreme, but these aren't a bunch of, undead ghouls or anything. These are paladins and even angels in some cases, so that's really fun. I really like as I mentioned, the flavoring. It's just super richly detailed, from everything from the treasures to the creatures. You feel like you're in a temple of Tyr, which is really fun. I don't like the name, the Theocracy, but the group is very richly thematic, which is really nice. It's huge, 29 rooms, 3 floors. That is a hell of a heist. Your players are going to get lost in there. They're going to be in danger, and that's fantastic, because this, at that level, they need to be challenged, and it's pretty hard. I can't tell how challenging it is based on just reading it and my limited experience with that high level play, but it feels pretty damn challenging in good ways, like in ways that are gonna fuck them up a little bit in terms of having to do patrols and having these traps and having to discover how do I even get to the hammer once I find it, because it's behind this magical anti-magic shell to solve this puzzle for. Really, really good stuff. Outcomes, there's not a whole lot here. Obviously, they're supposed to recover the Dragonfall Horn. Unfortunately, there's no notes on the Dragonfall Horn itself. There's other items. They could get a new pet cat or unfamiliar. There's one note about how there's a cat in the kitchen, so I don't know how they end up with a pet cat, but I guess they could be nice to the cat. The imp, though, seems really fun. Form a dubious allegiance with the Rakshasa, depose the tyrannical leader, or they could entirely destroy the Temple of Tyr, which is certainly a thing. I'm not sure that you still want to be doing that. Like I said, I would flavor it like maybe just take out the High Theocrats. Could be a fun twist that they learn about during the adventure, and like, oh, we actually need to not just recover this artifact, but also kind of right the ship of this militant sect by deposing the leader, and maybe hopefully seeing the error of their ways, either politically by maybe like getting evidence from her or a confession or something, or just defeating her in combat, as is usually the case with D&D. So let's break down my pros and cons for the Theocracy as we go back up to this very, very scary looking. This is really artfully done, though. I like this cover art. It's got the very beautiful, blonde-haired angel, but with the juxtaposition of like her insane face and then this blood on the clothes and the sword is really cool looking. Pros: fantastic art, lettering, and organization that makes everything look like an officially published D&D 5th edition adventure. Like, just visually stunning the way the PDF is organized and the way it looks. Absolutely amazing. Pro: it has a gigantic detailed dungeon design with helpful notes on patrol schedules for stealth-inclined parties, which is something I've very rarely seen, and it works really well here because obviously it's supposed to be a heist mission, so that is very much appreciated. And Pro, I really like the custom-made NPCs that make up most of the Theocracy, including the CR11 Super Paladin boss, but just the almost basically just created a generic NPC knight character, which is that CR7 Theocratic Paladin too, which is a really neat thing to have. And the biggest pro is it is just super richly thematic and detailed with how well, I mean, it really feels like you are in a Temple of Tyr with angels and hellhounds and priests, and everything's all cathedral and ornamental, and the treasures are all really nice, paintings and treasures, and it's great. Like, I get that theme, which is nice. Cons: the Theocracy is a really dumb name. I really don't like the name. It's a dumb name for the adventure, and it's a dumb name for a militant group of Tyr. There's so many cool, flavorful names that could have been used that's probably the biggest thing I would change if I were running it. I would call the Theocracy something else, like Tyr's Justice or something. I don't know. The actual name just bugs me. It just does. And the other con: the Dragonfall Horn, the actual artifact and item that your players' entire motivation are for infiltrating this dungeon, is not really given any information beyond a neat little background story involving dragons, but the actual item isn't giving me any mechanical stat blocks or notes or anything like that. So that's pretty disappointing, because it really does feel like just a generic MacGuffin of anything at that point. So, final verdict. The Theocracy provides a high-level heist mission set within a richly thematic, densely packed holy temple of Tyr. So thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com, and you can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.